This is your World War III update. This very surreal apocalyptic scene that you're seeing behind me is not AI generated. It is not out of a movie. In fact, this is a place called Tuapse in Russia, just on the Black Sea coast, an oil town. And as you can see, there's an oil refinery that is currently very much on fire. Now, that is important because this is one of Russia's largest oil refineries, produces around 250,000 barrels of oil a day, and depending on which way the wind is blowing, if you strike one of these tanks, the fire can actually jump from tank to tank. And usually when the Ukrainians score a direct hit, they quickly follow it up with another salvo before the Russians can muster their air defense. And so we can expect that this facility will be targeted once again. Now, why is this important at all? Well, any other month, year, this would likely garner mainstream headlines. But because we've been so heavily desensitized to this sort of thing, really, such an anomalous event doesn't even trigger a footnote on mainstream media, much less conversation on social media. Nobody is talking about this, okay? And this was a major attack. The most recent in a string of major attacks on Russia's oil and gas facilities, and it should leave skeptics asking the question as to why is the Trump administration not denouncing Zelensky and Ukraine's attacks on Russian oil and gas infrastructure if the goal is to suppress energy prices and maintain supply. You really have to ask those questions because, of course, the only way the Ukrainians can pull this off is leveraging NATO weapons, first of all, drones that are co-manufactured with other European nations, as well as dwindling but still available American budgets, despite what the U.S. government says, as well as SIGINT, signals intelligence and satellite data that is provided to help target and put these drones on their targets. So you have to ask yourself, why is the United States not reining in Zelensky at this point in time? Shouldn't they be doing that? They're not calling attention to it at all, despite the so-called adversarial relationship between NATO and the Trump administration, which I've said on multiple occasions is all for show. The United States is not going to relinquish control of one of its main footholds in the world, especially one that allows it to be a launch pad for attacks on the Middle East. Now, why this is so important is because today, Sergei Shoigu, you probably remember him, the former Russian defense minister, came out and is talking now about invoking what's called Article 51 of the UN Charter. And this basically declares a nation's inherent right of collective self-defense against an attack by another nation. Now, why are the Russians speaking legalese all of a sudden? And you got to remember, the Russians are incredibly jurisprudent. If they're going to invade a country, they're first going to provide legal pretext for doing so. And no matter what you believe, if you believe it's a legitimate grievance or not, that typically is the case. So what is their grievance? Well, they're saying that the Baltic states, the former Soviet intermarium states like Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, are being used by Ukrainian drones to provide airspace cover so that they can circumvent Russian air defense systems. And because, of course, the Russians don't want to be firing into these countries because that would be an Article 5 situation, according to NATO, which would potentially, and I say potentially because most people don't believe it'll happen yet, cause NATO to enter into the war, which instantly puts us in a DEFCON 2 at the very least, possibly DEFCON 1 situation, okay? They're saying that they're using this airspace as cover to do deep strikes inside Russia, specifically most recently around St. Petersburg, where they were targeting Russian oil refineries, just like the one I just showed you. Now, again, when the Russians make these sorts of jurisprudent invocations, it usually means that they're serious. They're getting ready to do something. They're beyond, Dmitry Medvedev's saber rattling. But that saber rattling is significant because just yesterday, recall that Dmitry Medvedev said the following: Russia's defense ministry statement must be taken literally. The list of European facilities which make drones and other equipment is a list of potential targets for the Russian armed forces. When strikes become a reality, it depends on what comes next. Sleep well, European partners. Okay? So what he's referencing here is a list of targets that was unveiled yesterday. I believe it was by the Russian MOD. And they basically released this list of places across Europe that are assisting the Ukrainians with constructing drones, which are being used in Russia. And this is the deputy head of the National Security Council in Russia directly threatening Europe that these places might be struck. And this is immediately followed up by the talks about Article 51 by Sergei Shoigu. Okay, so whether this is, Russian revanchism and wanting to go back to the glory days of the Cold War and reunite the Soviet-era countries, or whether it is an actual legitimate grievance, is kind of neither here nor there. The fact is the Russians are preparing for this, okay? And they're now talking about protecting, and under the same sort of pretext that they did in Ukraine, protecting their Russian-speaking populations inside those places. And there's a lot of talk about military buildups in Finland, as well as along the border in Belarus, and just multiple places across the map. Something big. I have a sneaking suspicion that the attention will be turned back to Europe soon, not because the Iranian war is going to end, not by a long shot, but just because that situation is approaching a critical mass once again. Now, the U.S. military is currently pursuing Iranian vessels in waters that are basically global at this point in time. So they've sharply escalated their pressure campaign on Iran by expanding enforcement beyond the regional blockade, allowing forces to intercept, board, and seize Iranian-linked vessels globally. And this is one of those vessels. And as you can see, this is a real video of a U.S. helicopter which is circling, I believe, one of the largest tankers of its sort. It's a VLCC, very large crude carrier, and I believe there's only 5 in the world that are this size. One of them, of course, belongs to the Iranians or has Iranian oil in it, and they're interdicting these vessels now not only in the Gulf of Oman and the Strait of Hormuz and the Arabian Sea, but abroad. Okay, so that is an expansion of the conflict. Now, the Trump administration came out today. Trump came out and said something about how the Iranians had agreed to give up their enriched uranium. The Iranians came out an hour later and said this is nonsense. But you just never know. You never know what to believe at this point in time, because they're expecting this blockade is going to go on for at least 6 months, and that a deal is going to take at least 6 months, as it should. I mean, we're 4 years in to negotiations with Russia and Ukraine. We still don't have a deal, much less high-level public officials meeting with one another like we've seen with J.D. Vance, which was a total disaster. This is something that's making the rounds right now. Apparently, sailors on I believe this is the USS Tripoli, are complaining about a lack of food. And you got to take all these things with a grain of salt. Okay, so I immediately contacted Steve Syros, one of our main affiliate companies that we work with, who makes the finest in freeze-dried food cuisine, lasts forever. This is roast beef, okay, whole cuts, the best stuff. You can go through the link in the description, get 15% off. And he has contacts with the Navy, and he's basically telling me that he thinks this is BS. That it's a story that, anybody can just go up and ask for just this amount of food and take a picture of it and say, hey, we're starving on the warship. So I would not be surprised if CENTCOM or the Department of Defense didn't come out and kind of debunk these claims in the near future. Of course, trying to pull on the heartstrings of people, and this could actually be construed as a support the troops sort of thing, and they turn it into this big PR stunt where they give them lobster again or something, and everybody's happy. There's always a catch-22 with the support the troops idea, because support the troops to do what? To wage extrajudicial warfare against a country? illegitimately, I mean, that's something, everybody wants to support the troops, but you got to be careful with that, support the troops, bombing bridges and power plants and creating global economic upheaval, probably not a good idea. So anyways, apparently Steve says that he doesn't believe that this is actually the case, and I can't see them, that this is something that's easy for them to do. They're not running out of food. Okay, nobody's running out of food in the U.S. military. The last thing they want to do is lower morale at a time like this. It may be that a supply ship was late by a day. You really have to, just be skeptical of these sorts of things, because these things can resupply at sea. So, take it with a big grain of salt. This is another NASA firm's satellite image showing the heat signature of that image that I showed you earlier. So this is basically the satellite picture. These satellites detect the heat signatures. And as you can see, there are multiple fires burning across this facility, so it's not just one. Donald Trump today came out and he's talking about Lebanon and how he brokered a ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. And I'm not going to get too much into this, but essentially what people need to know, Lebanon is divided into the Lebanese government, which plays host to one of the largest U.S. embassies in the world, okay? And they are in a tangle with the Hezbollah group, who's in the south primarily. And so Hezbollah and Lebanon don't really get along that well. And the Lebanese government is afraid of Hezbollah. And so this ceasefire is not with Hezbollah and Israel, it is with the Lebanese government, who is trying to find a way to disarm Hezbollah. Okay, so again, this is not what Trump is making it out to be. This is just basically setting Lebanon up for a civil war, which is what's happening, because now that the Israelis are united with the Lebanese government, they're going to work together to now get the Hezbollah caught in a crossfire. So it's going to turn into a civil war. Let's see what Morandi has to say today. Because of Netanyahu and Trump, Iran is preparing to destroy everything in the Persian Gulf, including all critical infrastructure in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. I'm going to talk to him on Saturday, and I'm going to have to ask him, why do you guys never say Israel? They're the ones who are, you claim, behind this, so why not add them to the list? Why go for the lowest hanging fruit? I realize the reaction formation Freudian thing, you go for the lesser target, but they should at least include it in there. Temperatures will rise, the peninsula will become uninhabitable, and the global economy will crash. And the temperatures will rise because air conditioners won't work. He also goes on to say, one of the commanders of the resistance has spoken of a serious warning issued by borderless warriors to all vessels in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. He said that starting tomorrow afternoon, this is from Morandi, this guy's close to the seat of power. He's saying those intended to cross the Bab el-Mandeb Strait must be careful from threats from all sides. So this blockade that the U.S. is imposing is triggering the Iranians to make some moves. And it appears as though whatever Trump's saying about the Iranians forfeiting their enriched uranium is likely a bunch of BS. How much sense would that make to go to war over it in the first place, to make all those sacrifices only to give it up in the final hour? Just wouldn't really make any sense. So according to the Hormuz letter, Iran has directly denied Trump's claim. Now, look, it could be that Iran is going to deny this stuff, even though they've agreed to this on the back channels, or maybe they've agreed to dilute it, and Trump made he stretched that to say, well, they're going to give it to us, when really they're just going to dilute it and use it in their refineries. Or, who knows? A second Iranian source called it another lie, adding that no major progress has been made and that continuation of talks is contingent on compliance with all Iran's conditions. Well, there's been this so-called ceasefire in Lebanon for the last week, and the Israelis have been striking Lebanon every single day, and the Iranians initially said that, hey, if you keep doing that, we're going to do something, and they haven't done anything, so who really knows? Pakistan, another gas facility, went up in flames. Another coincidence. So we got Panama, we got Mexico, we got Australia, we got Pakistan, we got the United States, we got Russia, we got everywhere, all right? This is Zelensky pleading with the EU to send back the fighting age males who abandoned Ukraine. I shouldn't say abandoned because that's not the right word, because, you know, you might not agree with the war, and that might be part of the reason why you dodged the draft. And so he's calling on European countries to basically expel those people from the country back to Ukraine so they can be mobilized. And here is what he says. I will just read it. And as for the young people who are not in Ukraine today but abroad, first of all, they're different young people, and I will agree with you that as for those young people who are of mobilization age and who went abroad and left temporarily, and it turned out they got everything they wanted and they left, many of them left in violation of Ukrainian legislation accordingly. That's desperate words. The services of both countries should deal with this issue. Wow. And as for these people, our armed forces would like them to return unconditionally so you can get scooped up off the street, stuffed in a van, and sent to the front lines to die. Unconditionally, because it's a matter of justice. We have people, warriors on the front. They need rotation. And they, well, although they're from iron, they say Ukrainian warriors, but well, let's be honest, they have families. And I'm sure that there's a lot of European sheep-dipped soldiers in there, probably more, a lot more now. And you're going to see that more and more moving into the future. What else is Trump talking about here? Oh, yeah, he's talking about the ballroom. And here he goes on to talk about how it's an apocalypse Armageddon shelter. Let me see. I'll just skip to look at how verbose this shit is. Okay. A great gift to America gets delayed or doesn't get built is attempting to prevent future presidents and world leaders from having a safe and secure large-scale meeting place or ballroom, one with bomb shelters, a state-of-the-art hospital and medical facilities, protective partitioning, top secret military. Aren't you not supposed to say that if it's top secret? Top secret military installations, structures, and equipment, protective missile-resistant steel, columns, roofs, beams, drone-proof ceilings and roofs, military-grade venting. And did he talk to Ron at Atlas Survival Shelters recently? I mean, this is just whack. This is wacky. The president talking about building doomsday shelters for themselves. Well, the population can't even get good public transit. The Iranians are loading up oil tankers still, and I believe the reason why is probably because these are getting full and they don't want to have to cap wells. Now, I'm going to be releasing an interview that I did with Chris Martenson today over at Peak Prosperity, and he's breaking down in that video why it is so difficult to bring these oil wells back online after you basically cap them and shut them off, okay? Very important stuff. If Iran has to do that, then that is going to really impact their ability to get going again if this thing ever ends. What is this? Trump. Oil prices are roughly half of what was anticipated. And I didn't steal this meme, but I thought this was hilarious because some guy posted this. I can't remember who. It was on X. And they posted in response that it's shocking that Trump knew that prices could be double what they are right now, and he still went for it. Okay, that's pretty crazy to think. And especially in light of all the global chaos that is being caused right now, which shows no signs of abating at this point. Tucker Carlson today is talking about Trump as the Antichrist. And the only reason why I bring this up is because, again, back when Trump just became president, I was warning people, this guy's the World War III president, watch out. And I was chastised by everybody, all of the people who used to probably follow me and Tucker, who jumped ship. And now they're all saying what I said, only much, much worse. Tucker is calling Trump, that the guy that he helped get elected, him, Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Megyn Kelly, Alex Jones, all those people, they all got him elected. If it wasn't for them, there's a good chance he might not have got elected. I mean, never mind, he wouldn't have gotten elected. And here they are talking about how Trump is the Antichrist. Chalk it up on the board. That's why you come to this channel. Stephen Miller today said something interesting. Let's hear what he said. Let's see if you can pick out the anomaly in what he's saying here. Let me turn the volume up.
And this embargo and every other option is on the table as President Trump seeks that final, safe, secure outcome for the people of the world.
Wait a minute, say that again.
And this embargo and every other option is on the table as President Trump seeks that final, safe, secure
not final solution.
outcome.
Okay, right. Because that would be too on the nose. Yeah, so this guy, I'm sure he had some relatives who were in Poland in World War II. And to call for the final solution of Iran in that sort of way is quite ironic. And I'll leave it at that. I did a video yesterday about stockpiling fuel and how you can make it last forever. And not forever, but I mean, of course, but look, if you have, it doesn't matter how much fuel you have stored, you probably can't store enough for SHTF. But if you want to extend the life of it, there's things that you can do above and beyond fuel stabilizer. Most people don't know these things. Go check that video out on the Canadian Prepper YouTube channel and hopefully provide you some useful tips, because this thing is far, far from over. In fact, it is likely only just begun. I'm going to leave it there, folks, because this will be my third video that I released today, which is a limit for me. I released a video on the Blue Eddy fridge power system, which is an innovative system in that the form factor and it's bespoke for just being used for a fridge or a freezer. So it's a lithium power bank, which is just for the purpose of being used with one appliance. Now, you can use it with other appliances, but it's designed to work with a fridge. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it. And I think this may be where that whole market is moving, towards building things that are purpose-built for a specific appliance, as opposed to having one system that integrates everything. In fact, when I was talking to Chris Martinson today, he said that he had a power system just for his well, and that's why he likes the more modular systems as opposed to the whole home renewable energy system. So there's something to say about the flat form factor too, and putting it on a wall and where it can fit. And yes, Tesla Powerwalls have done that in the past, but they're usually big, they're thick, they're bulky, they're meant to be on the side of a house or in a garage. This is something that can go in between your cupboards and the top of your fridge. So go check it out. And yeah, I'll keep you guys posted as usual. We got a lot of videos. I got a lot of things in the pipeline that I just simply haven't released. There's about 10, what I used to call blue strip videos. Now everything's just red strip, which are, higher production, actionable information, which I release sparingly at this point in time because everybody's concerned with current events and the roof that's on fire. Thanks for watching.